Shenhe is finally back, everyone. One of my most favorite characters to play in Genshin Impact, and a character that I have a lot of experience playing because of course I have her in every single one of my Abyss run. But my most favorite character doesn't mean that it's gonna be a fitting for everyone in Genshin Impact, right? Or is it? Which is why we have today's video discussing whether or not Shenhe is still a worth it character for you to pull in patch 3.5. And so with that guys, let's just dive into the video. So ever since Shenhe was released, she is considered to be a character with kind of an intricate kit that can make her potentially difficult to understand for many. However, the more you play her, the more you realize that she's a very simple character that focuses a ton on buffing your cryo damage. However, her potential isn't just limited to solo just cryo mono teams. Back when her first banner, I would say that her popularity wasn't there yet because I think it's from the fact that many of us within the community haven't been able to see her full potential, as well as the concept of a niche support for an element was quite new back then as well. But after some time have passed, as well as some more introduction towards cryo character, Shenhe found a lot of valuability to be used in her team. Not to mention considering the fact that she is the sole focused cryo buffer at this point, we can see that she will be very valuable towards any of the cryo DPS coming out in the future as well. But talking about the good sides of Shenhe, I would say that she has a lot. The biggest thing is obviously what she does in her kit is that she can offer up to a 30% total damage bonus for cryo element when you're utilizing the whole of her skill and kit, which is roughly on par with what a 750 EM Kazuha would do, while she also has a built-in cryo resistance shred, which is why you've seen so many teams running Shenhe and Kazuha together in their cryo team, creating very high cryo numbers being shown on screen. She's also relatively cheap to build because you don't really need to focus on her main stat too much, as she only needs to focus only on attack percentage and not requiring too much into crit ratio. The only most important thing she would want is for you to focus on building her talent level, as well as giving her a decent weapon to use. Now, unless you have her Calamity Queller, which is her best in slot weapon, most likely you will be using her a Favonius Lance because that would solve her energy recharge issue. And a Fav Lance is basically a free to play weapon, and I'm sure that almost all of us have access to it up until this point. Her build is basically covered. The good thing about her Icy Quill, and if you don't remember what that is that it basically the part where she buffs your cryo damage. Now the Icy Quill doesn't just apply to your on-field character like many of the buffer in Genshin do, but it actually applies to every party member on the team. So therefore, even if you're having other sub DPS character all feel like doing cryo damage, or even Kazuha is whirling cryo and dealing cryo swirl damage, that part of the cryo damage is still getting buffed, which is why Shenhe is such a valuable character when it comes to building a cryo team. But that aside, she does have some of the downside that can easily be addressed, and the biggest one I would say right now is gonna be her energy recharge cost, since her burst does cost 80 energy recharge, and it's also a very big part of her buff towards the team. So alongside with you focusing on everything on attack percentage so that she gives you a high buff, her energy recharge level should be at least 160% and above if you wanna have her burst every rotation. Also, even though the Icy Quills does give buff to your whole team, it is quite limited in terms of how much damage instances it will help you, because it's only giving you either a 5 or a 7 attack instances for each of the character, and it is also triggered if your attack hits multiple enemies. So many of the time if you're in a group situation, her buff just goes out so fast that it feels like she haven't even given any buff to your team. And I would say those are going to be the two main biggest downsides that she has. Any other thing I would say it's very minor, character, you don't really have to worry too much about it. Shenhe is a very well designed character with having a lot of different nice and unique skills blend into her kits, like the Icy Quill, the damage buff from her second passive talents, as well as resistance shred, and also a bit of particle regeneration for the team if you are using a Fav lance on her. Now when talking about Shenhe, her constellation is basically something we really want to touch on, because I would say that she's one of the characters that has a biggest impact when it comes to constellations, especially when we are looking at C1. This constellation is a world different apart from her C0, because with just one more E skill activated for her, it technically changes her gameplay and performance 100%, guys, because as you remember, her E skill is where she gives the Ice Quill and a lot of buff. However, it does have quite long cooldown, especially if you are holding it. That is up to a 15-second cooldown, messing up your rotation like a lot. Not to mention, you're only getting like either 5 or 7 quills for each of the E skill. Adding another one on top of that, and you are gonna be seeing an immense difference into Shenhe. This, I would say, is considerably one of the best C1 in the game, just below C1 Bennett, because the change is so majorly different. At the moment you get your hand onto C1 Shenhe, you're gonna be loving her even more, because now she is such an easy character to play around with all of your rotations. It fits smoothly well. You don't really have to time yourself too much in terms of like thinking if you should be holding or just tapping your E skill on your Shenhe. It is a lot more forgiving when you're having a C1 Shenhe. A C2 is also major, guys, in that it gives her burst a 6 seconds longer, while also the active character within the field deal 15% increased cryo crit damage. Like for me personally, another additional 6 seconds of having her burst 18-second uptime on field is already more than enough for a C2, but they decided to add an additional 15% cryo crit damage. It was a very generous thing for Hoyoverse to do for a C2 Shenhe. Usually I don't really see they are this forgiving for a character, which is really nice. Do note that this is only available for active character within the field, so any sub DPS cryo character like, you know, Ganyu or Kaya who's giving off field damage won't get this 15% cryo crit damage buff. Her C3 is really nice as well. As you can see, I have a C3 Shenhe. Main reason being is that it gives her E skill an extra damage level, which is a nice boost if you have the Primo Gems to invest in. C4 is probably gonna be the less significant within her constellation kit, because what it does is that basically the more Ice Quill your team consumes, the next E skill when she triggers is gonna be getting bonus damage. Now most of the time you're not gonna be focusing on having your Shenhe doing damage number, so this is a constellation that isn't really needed for you. C5 isn't too much of a big deal as well. It does give you more talent level towards your burst. However, do remember that the resistance shred of your talent level caps at level 10, which is something that everyone can get, and it caps at 15% resistance shred, meaning that even if you have this constellation, it doesn't really do too much of a difference to that. Now as for Shenhe C6, this is arguably gonna be one of the most unique constellation in the game, because what it does is that it basically gives the ability that your character is not going to be triggering no more end charge attack damage towards your Ice Quill quota, or in other words, you're basically getting a full E skill Shenhe buff until its duration end. Now the only problem with the C6 at this point is that there isn't too many character who's able to utilize this to its fullest potential, because the only character who's able to maximize this potential is going to be on-field Ayaka, who focuses on no more end charge attack damage. Character like Ganyu have her burst up on many of the time, therefore most likely her burst is going to be consuming the Ice Quill before Ganyu is able to fully utilize Shenhe C6 at this point. However, I actually see a lot of potential if you happen to have a Shenhe C6, because I know that there are going to be many cryo characters coming out in the future, not to mention where you're able to create a lot of, you know, unique team comp from this constellation, like Cryo Kuching, Cryo Zhongli is a lot more viable to use at this point because of the tremendous buff Shenhe has already given towards cryo damage, and there's slotting in Chongyun on the team, you're you're having a nice and unique team comp to play around with. So overall, I would say that Shenhe Constellation is one of the best in the game to invest in if you have the ability to do so. Obviously, it's not a must because C0 Shenhe is already a complete character on her own. She's a bit tough on the rotation side of thing at C0. However, I would personally say that C1 is quite cheap in opposed to how much it offers for Shenhe in terms of her power level and ease of gameplay. So if you're not planning to be pulling for any characters sometime soon, you can at least consider trying to grab her C1 because it is very worth it for how much you are investing in. So for me personally, I would say that Shenhe is a very unique character and a special character for me because at first I really didn't feel that she's going to be having potential back when I was looking at her pre-release analysis because it was kind of vague. We didn't really see too much potential considering we have so many good support characters back then, like especially Bennett, Yunjin. But then I decided to pull for Shenhe and oh my god, it was a huge difference towards my cryo team. Especially I actually used a lot of cryo characters like Ganyu and Ayaka. Not to mention her gameplay is fun guys, her attack animation is really good to look at. Like even her E skills and burst animation is pretty cool as well. But that's actually not the only reason why I pull for Shenhe. As you can already see, I have a C3 Shenhe and I'm not really a player guys who was on Genshin Impact. I only pull for Constellation that I see is going to be giving me a lot of potential and future support because I can already see that Shenhe down the line is having a lot of future potential because I know that she's going to be the top cryo buffer even till the end of the game. The only cryo buffer that can beat Shenhe at this point is the character that have healing capability with everything that Shenhe is able to do right now. Otherwise, they are not going to be able to take Shenhe's spot in any way. So Hoyoverse is definitely going to be creating a lot more future cryo DPSs and my Shenhe on my account is already perfectly waiting to build a team for those characters. Moreover, Shenhe have given me a lot of flexibility towards my team comp building because first of all, mono cryo team is a lot more viable now, and even if you're not using a mono cryo team like using freeze team or even melt team comp, you don't really need to have good support character like Bennett to be on this specific team any longer, and you can save good support for your other team, especially when you're going into the Abyss. Not to mention unique team comp that I discussed before, Kuching, Zhongli, a lot of other characters that can get their normal attack infused can play along with Shenhe and Chongyun team comps. It is very fun and it's kind of like an end game kind of thing that we do most of the time since Genshin Impact is obviously pretty easy at this point. And so through all of our discussion that we have just talked about, the final question is gonna be, is she still a worth it character right now? And my honest answer is gonna be, guys, if you have the Primo Gems to spare, then she is definitely super worth it, even if you're not using her much right now, because who knows, later down the road there will be very good cryo character of your likings, and then having Shenhe here already will help you to instantly build a good team. But if you're lacking in Primo Gems and is considering, for the time being Shenhe is still best suitable if you're an Ayaka or Ganyu main, as she makes the biggest difference when running in these character teams. Other than that, I do recommend you to actually wait, because of course she is a niche cryo buffer. If you're not using a cryo team, then she wouldn't really have too much of a value for you better than that and save for character in patch 3.6. And so guys, that's gonna be my saying on Shenhe for now. I really enjoy playing this character and I hope that the video have been very helpful for you. If you have any question, do leave it down in the comment section and I or some of our lovely Genshin players out there will get to you there. Namika is also on Shenhe's banner, and if you're wondering how well he is performing, I do have quite an in-depth video looking into that. I hope that the video is going to be very fun for you. If you're new to the channel guys, be sure to subscribe so to not miss out on my future Genshin Impact videos. I really appreciate you guys sticking with me till this part of the video, and with that I wish you a super day and I will catch you on my next video.